are so excited. We just finished with our guest. We had a guest on the podcast. And Dane, what are some of the highlights?
Man, the military to millionaire, Dave Pere, he walked us through so many tools and programs I just didn't know existed, even though I am married to a military member and served myself way back, things that just were never shown. So I think this was one of my favorite episodes in the sense that I learned a lot. And also, I just love Dave as a guest because he's just fun to talk to.
And if you're not military or you don't know anyone in the military, don't turn this off because there's a lot of great advice he gives. And because Dave will share his story, he happened to be in the military, but he started off as a normal guy. And now I think at the time of the filming today, he was like a 1.5 millionaire.
Yeah.
And so there's tons of advice, and be forewarned, he's a Marine. We talk, it's a little bit more of an explicit
Real
episode.
Talk.
Early on, we are a little distracted because we're all friends. We know each other, but there's a lot of meat and potatoes. 7 to 10 minutes into the podcast, if you want to just skip to there. But it's the beginning of it sets the background. There's everything from shitting your pants to setting up your job for
becoming a millionaire. Yeah. So. Well, and really, Dave gave some great advice for people who maybe missed the boat on some things. People just trying to get invested in a vehicle now. So I think a lot of what he said, military or not, was very practical and, again, really sound. So loved having him as a guest. Looking forward to launching the episode.
We're going to jump into it right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the FU Money Podcast. We've got, we have a guest joining us today. But first, FU Dane.
FU and FU Dave. But for real.
Cheers.
All right, boys. What are we drinking today here? What do we got on the screen?
I got a little, what do you got, Dave?
I don't know. What's the name of that distillery with the whiskey we got?
Oh, that's Nika.
Colorado?
Dave's drinking a really nice small batch from Nika Distillery in Hokkaido, Japan.
Nice.
Delicious.
Very nice, Dave.
Have you seen the Yamazaki? I saw a bottle. I got an ad. I don't know why I got an ad. I got an ad for a 55-year-old bottle of Yamazaki for $999,999. And I was like,
it's a good deal.
Wow, that looks incredible. And then I was like, what other whiskey do they have? And like they're 12 years, like $300. And I'm like, Or
Dane, what are you drinking today?
I'm tempted.
Japan's killing it. I'm keeping it classy, gentlemen. I'm drinking a scotch in my brandy glass.
And I am drinking.
Well, I couldn't tell you.
The Flat Creek Lager by 4x4 Brewing, and that's pretty good. So,
also a good blend.
Yeah, it's a very exotic brewery. It comes from hails from the little-known town of Nixa, Missouri, and Springfield, Missouri.
I think they technically started in Springfield. So, anyway. All right, well, guys,
here. Since we're going to be all boozy, and all, do either of you know what this is called? The glass.
A snifter glass?
Ooh, that's the one word. It's called a Glencairn.
Ooh.
Or Glencairn.
Very nice Glencairn. Mine's a snifter.
All right. Well, super excited today. We
just wanted to show how classic.
The military millionaire himself and author of No BS Guide to the Military, Dave motherfucking Pere, on the show.
Woo!
You guys are watching on video. That's what his name is when he pops up. So,
yeah. And to give a disclaimer to people, there's going to be some explicit content. Dave is a Marine, and he can't help himself. So we're going to let Dave be Dave, and we're going to enjoy the podcast as much as possible.
It's actually not true. I'm very good at helping myself when I want to. I just prefer not to. I didn't achieve financial freedom so that I could PC myself and censor myself.
That's right. Yeah, this is FU money. That means you can say what you want, right?
I mean, literally, I told Hugh, I was like, I don't want to be on your podcast unless I can just have fun. And Hugh was like, well, can have fun. So,
and we're kind of there, for the listeners who are just joining us who may not know what, anything about Dave or Dane and I. And so the three of us are business partners in a few capacities. And Dave, so we're targeting normal people, a lot of blue collar.
The guy who runs the business is like, oh, yeah, you guys are part of this, too.
I was like, oh, crap, we got to have Dave sign something. But, yeah, we got, normal folk, blue-collar community, and that really a lot of families I grew up with, they had a lot of people in the military. A lot of people listening to this may be former military. They may be going into the military. And so early on in the show, we wanted to have Dave on and just kind of talk about things that service members, either A, if you're in right now or joining, what they can do to maximize stuff. And then B, you're going to probably, most of us spend more time not as service members than they do as service members. And so then like the intros and the basics, because there are some epic tools out there, some strategies that vets get that we don't, the normal folks do not get as a thank you for, you know, signing your life away to Uncle Sam for a little bit of time. So,
Worth it. And I love to start out how we always kind of throw in some mind-blowing facts. Do we have any really great mind-blowing facts about Dave? I have one, and it was recent, and it comes from a retreat that we all just went to. But I'll skip that mind-blowing fact.
That's not a mind-blowing
It turns out that the
I'll
mind-blowing
tell
fact
the mind-blowing fact. Dave shit his
Well,
pants
Dave shit his
snowboarding.
pants snowboarding.
I wasn't even going to go there. I wasn't going to go there. I was going to say Dave is a master debater. And I mean
I'm a
that in
masturbator, all right.
every sense of the word. We had an incredible debate with a discussion panel of like 20 people. And that was really awesome.
And I was just fighting everybody's points because it was so much fun. Okay, so to preface, I don't even remember the question was whether or not balance exists. And it was you, right? Dane was like, I don't think it exists, but I'm going to argue the other side. And I'm like, oh, it's down.
Absolutely.
It's going down. So then Dean feeds me alcohol and is like, be feisty. And I was like, done. And so we went probably an hour and a half of just people would make a point and I'd be like, well, yeah, but that's bullshit because you said this and that would be, you know, and then Dane would come in with something that had we were going back and forth and
awesome.
the whole point the whole time I'm like, you don't even agree with this.
Man. No, this is and then one mind-blowing fact. Dave was one of the very first people that I ever asked. This is before I owned any properties. I tracked him down. He responded for some reason. And I was like, hey, look at all this stuff. I bought 26 I'm going to buy 26 crack houses. I have no plan. I've never done this before. What do you think? And and that's actually how I met Dave. I didn't know he was as big a deal as he was at the time. But that didn't matter. He was a guy that was going to talk to me at a real estate meetup. So
Dave's like every guy. You know, sometimes going back to fact one, sometimes guys shit themselves. I just want to repeat that it happens to the best of us, even if you're financially free. And I appreciate you admitting that as well, Dave. It's pretty big of you, man.
Yeah, you know, it happens. It was that a memory no one could ever forget. Shit was funny. But yeah. I love how Hugh paints me as this guy who like, oh yeah, Dave was willing to meet with me when nobody else really would. Yeah, the other side of that story is I was worried because Hugh is more talkative than I am. And on Facebook, he's one of those habitual, like, instead of sending a paragraph, like, why send a paragraph when I can send 6 single sentences? And so I was like, I don't know how bad this guy is going to be about picking my brain. So I gave Hugh, I literally was like, I was in town for like 4 days. And on the last day, I was sitting in a coffee shop from like 9 a.m. to noon to get some work done. And I was like, Hugh, if you show up at 11:40, I'll have 20 minutes. That's all I got. I'm just slammed. When really I was just trying to catch up on like emails and stuff. But I was like, I was worried if I told him to show up at 9, he would never, like, wouldn't get anything else done. And that was the only window I had to get stuff done. By the way, I would have been right because Hugh and I don't get anything done when
we're friends anymore. Now. So.
Yeah, I know. but so at the time, but he showed up. We had it like 20, 30 minutes. We talked. We got to know each other. We hit it off. I was able to make an introduction to a property manager that we both still use. And now we've taken down $2 or $3 million worth of properties together. We own a wholesaling company, the three of us together. It's been good. It's been really good. So Hugh is, as much as he loves to say he's a huge piece of garbage, he's a medium-sized at best. He's a decent guy.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Well, and speaking of,
I was going to say, it was Dave's systems and processes picked me up. He had like some kind of automated message. I popped onto Bigger Pockets from Springfield. That was his tag name, and or whatever his keyword tag. And then I think he reached out to me, but it probably wasn't him, anyways. Yep. But all that was going on.
Yeah, you posted. Well, no, it was me back then. I don't do that as much anymore. But yeah, you posted something that said the word Springfield, and I like had an alert set up. So I was like, ooh, someone's talking about my market. What's that? And what's funny is you had just moved back there,
And
and I didn't live there.
I had moved back here just shortly before then, and then you were, I think you were still a
And I was
year
so
out.
confused too because you were Hugh Carnahan, but then on Facebook you were still like WHOO.
Oh,
So I was
that's
like, I don't even know who
right.
I'm really talking to. It was like who Carnahan, and I was like,
Yeah. I remember because I was on
Keeping the
dating
mystery.
profiles.
and he's like this
Ooh.
Asian guy. I was like, I don't know what I'm getting into.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
I
And you
changed my
didn't.
Facebook name so you couldn't immediately find me on Bumble. If you found me, you Google it, but you couldn't find or whatever Facebook, and you couldn't find my real name because it just said the first name.
Is that the trick?
So
People keep finding me. It's not hard. They type in Marine Springfield real estate, and it's like there I am.
And bad
So.
words. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
And they get you. Well, actually, it's kind of interesting. So I can kind of segue this into something we wanted to get into, which is he was reaching out to you for a specific reason. And it's because he was looking to gain some advice, understand what he was getting into. You were someone who had some experience, but we want to kind of rewind from there a little bit, Dave. And something we like to get into is some of your early life. And so growing up, something we like to ask is, did you and your family talk about money? Was it evil? Was it not talked about? Was it taboo? What was kind of money like growing up in your home?
I would not say it was evil. I wouldn't say it was like taboo. My parents are very much Dave Ramsey. So they worked for an organization, Campus Crusade for Christ. There's an organization under that called Family Life. So they run, if you've ever heard of the Weekend to Remember, like marriage conferences around the country. They just retired last summer from 25 years of doing that, and now that they're retired, they do it as volunteers, which makes no sense to me. But I guess they like what they do. They're like, we get to do it for free now, and I'm like, I
Cool.
guess that's a win. Like, okay, but so they lived on support though. My dad had been an accountant, going for his CPA in San Francisco when we moved to Little Rock, and they lived 100% on support, no salary, and so it was. I don't know exactly how much they were bringing in, but I cannot imagine it was a ton. We lived a very, drink water when you go out to eat, non-name brand lifestyle. We were all homeschooled, very conservative, middle of nowhere. I mean, I was in Little Rock, but I was like 2 miles outside of Little Rock, and the town itself was called Roland, and Roland has a single stop sign in the post office. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. But we were close enough to Little Rock that I just say Little Rock. And so, I mean, yeah, it was not a bad experience, but very much like they lived like the envelope budgeting system and very frugal and very
Yeah.
like cash oriented. So they were good with money, and not like ever used in a negative word, but it was never something we had in abundance by any means.
So you kind of grew up. This kind of reminds me a little bit about my background. Just not that you didn't really talk about it. There was no name brands, right? You didn't grow up talking about it, and then here you are right now, and you are. What's your net worth, by the way? Wearing a name brand, right?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we
My
would always
brand,
be in Walmart
which
buying the
has a name.
cheap, the cheapest stuff. The Equate brand or Always Save in the yellow. But
Molto Mill.
Dave, what's your net worth now?
Choto mate kudasai. Let's get
Oh,
this,
a
let's
little
get this-
Japanese.
let's get
Wait
this
1
right.
minute. Nice, Dave.
Ah,
Chotomate kudasai. I haven't heard that in a while.
I know. It's for you because I'm drinking the Japanese whiskey. Okay, so I haven't done it yet for April. In March, it was 1.275, which is I think 600,000 shy of where it
So
was
you're-
pre-divorce. So,
You're a normal guy. You didn't grow up with a money background, and then you joined the Marine Corps. And I think we're going to get into a little bit how you made a bunch of mistakes for like most of your career in the Marine Corps as far as money goes.
I should probably preface on that too that I say 1.27. I value my entire brand at $250,000, and I have made that much in revenue already this year. So that's obviously an undercut,
Right.
But
Yeah. Better to be under than over.
Well, and so, but
Way to go,
but
Dave.
you were this background, which wasn't not that it wasn't a person; it was a normal person background, and here you are, a 1.5, millionaire more at this time.
yeah,
Probably more
I've
than that.
actually got. Yeah, I was gonna say I've got a hotel to add to that and a duplex to add to that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't updated it for April, so it's probably like 1.5. It probably would have been like 2 last month, before the divorce finalized. But yeah, I mean, real estate's great, man. All you got to do is buy stuff and not lose it. You're okay.
So like, what was the it moment? For your early life, what kind of change? What was the pivot where you were like, I'm a normal person, right? Just like we all were, and then it's like something happened to then make you at least aware that this was possible, right? Or were you always like that?
Yeah. So okay, so I guess let me real quick before I get to that point, because we talked like early. In 2008, I joined the Marine Corps because I didn't have money for school, didn't know what I wanted to study, wanted to see the world. Best way to leave Arkansas when you don't have any money is to join the military and let them take you. And I wanted some adventure, so I got the adventure. That first 4 years was amazing. Original plan was to get out, go to school, and I fell in love with the Marine Corps. So I did that for 13 years. And that first 7 of it, I mean, I made all the typical mistakes, right? I got my Eagle Globe and Anchor and all my all
Yeah.
my tattoos. I spent all my money on booze and not steroids, supplements, and women and Japan and just living life, right? Alcohol, and I think I mentioned that cars, Harley, rifles. All the things, right? And so 2015, I've been in for 7 years. I'm on recruiting duty. I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week. On average, I'm just slammed. And I have basically 10 grand in my thrift savings plan and a whole bunch of debt. And so I'm like negative net worth. And I'm like, wow, I'm not really doing anything. And so a buddy of mine was trying to get me into Amway. And he handed me the
Oh,
book Rich Dad
classic.
Poor Dad. Yeah, I know, right? And I was like, oh man, I don't like to read. And he's like, well, you drive a lot. Here's a CD. You want to listen to it on CD? And I was like, fine. And so that was really the catalyst. I listened to that book. And by the time I was done, I was like, oh shit, this makes sense. I'm going to do some stuff. Like Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's funny because it does not tell you anything like groundbreaking. It is simple. It's mindset. It doesn't give you any tactical information really. I've probably listened to it 3 or 4 times now, and I mean, really, all you get out of it is it takes a really boring subject, money, and makes it sound exciting. And so then you're like, oh, I could do this, right? It makes it sound easy, it makes it sound enticing, and I think that's usually enough to kick someone in the pants and get them on the right path. And that's really all it took for me. And so within 4 months, I'd bought a duplex, and that was the
That's
moment.
huge. Yeah, I think just the fact that you were listening on CD, and that's a round thing you put into a machine that then says words for the younger folks maybe listening. You've never seen what a CD is, which is bringing us way back. But yeah, I think that
I know my new car doesn't even have a
Rich
CD
Dad
player.
Poor Dad is it's written from the perspective of, I think it was a 10-year-old or a fifth grader or something, and that was probably the book that did it for me as well, which is huge.
Well, I think you guys missed the real takeaway. It's if you don't have a
That's
rich
right.
dad, get a rich dad. That's like step one. So you guys both missed that point. But Dave, truly, where that had clicked for you, where you were looking at your life and being like, holy crap, I have a negative net worth. I lived an exciting life. I joined the military. You did some cool things. You had cool stuff, like when you're young, rifles and the things that you're like, a dude's gonna go out and buy or whatever, but you didn't have anything that was building long-term wealth at all. And that's the classic mistake I think a lot of young guys make is we just don't think farther enough ahead. We don't have a rich dad or a mentor or someone who's like, hey, maybe you should consider an IRA or, some sort of vehicle that's building you along. You're like, cool, I got paid. Hey, that rifle I saw at the pawn shop? Nail, that's mine. Woo! And so where do you end up is 7 years into the Marine Corps with only 10,000 in your TSP and debt,
Yep.
which is wild.
Yeah, my 7-year-old son has more money right now than I did when I was 25.
Yeah. And Dane, I'm going to actually build a little bit on what you said. It's not that we are not thinking ahead. I remember, I don't know, being 20 something, 18, 19, and I was thinking ahead. I'm going to say I was unaware. I was not aware of the things that we could use, right? People think when they're talking about investing, oh, investing, that's hard, that's difficult. Oh, real estate, that's hard, that's difficult. Oh, that's for experienced people. People were just unaware how simple it could be. And
Absolutely.
and yeah, so man, so you're in the Marine Corps by the time, and then you listen to Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that pivots you. What took you from that it moment to the point where you're sitting here now? You've written a book, hoping to, you've probably saved hundreds of thousands of service members from making similar mistakes, but you know,
I would love to think it's that many.
you've saved 8 service members from.
Yeah. If only they would
somewhere in
listen,
between.
Dave. Yeah.
Somewhere in between.
And
I mean, I've sold quite a
to-
few copies of the book. In fact, I got a picture yesterday that my book is apparently in the library in Qatar at a Air Force
Whoa.
base. So somebody sent me a picture of them reading my book with like a library stamp on it that was like U.S. Air Force Qatar, and I was like, oh shit, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. But think about it. It's going to be somewhere like the Purple Book was for you, with some military guys like, hey, check this no BS guide to investing and all that stuff, right? Where they're going to pick it up and it's going to change their mindset and their thinking. But you also get into some tactical steps within there too, which is cool. And I know offline, I've reached out to you many times. Hey, how do I use my VA? Hey, who would you recommend to do this and that? Because you had all of these great connections and the knowledge. So I highly, highly recommend anybody who is a service member to read your book, like real talk. So I think it's
That's right.
pretty
You went through
awesome that you
Jaleh,
wrote
didn't
that.
you?
Yeah. I've used Jaleh on 3 things.
I just
So-
I had brunch with her last week.
Oh man, I would love to meet her in person. She's a super nice lady.
She's great. I met
Yeah.
her dog.
But
her dog was like.
I will
jumping all over
say,
me.
if you were, I guess some things that we wanted to talk about, because Hugh talked about awareness, right? You just weren't aware, Hugh, that there was things available like what the heck is an IRA, and it doesn't sound like a rich person thing that you go golfing with your buddies and talk about, right? What are all of these tools to build wealth? So I guess a question I had is, what do you wish you knew, and what kind of tools did you start learning about early on that changed that trajectory, where you stopped being in debt and you started changing who you are and becoming, building a net worth?
Man, there's some good stuff in there. I think if we're talking service member side, the thrift savings plan is incredible. And now anyone who joins now is going to get an automatic 5% matching
Dang.
contribution. So it won't start. I think it's 1% at first, and then once you hit year 2, it'll go to 5%. As long as you match, you'll put 5% in. So I've always told people, put 10% of your paycheck into the TSP while you're at boot camp. When they have you sign up, start it. You'll never know you're missing it. And then every time you get promoted, put 1% extra in. And so, or every time you get a pay raise. So that first 4 years, you're going to get 4 pay raises, plus if you get promoted. So you might get 6 or 7 pay raises. You might be at 15, 16, 17% that you're contributing by the end of 4 years. And then if you do that every time, like every time you get a pay raise, it's 2, 3, 4%. If you get a promotion, it's a jump. So if you do that, like every year I get a 3%, it's like, oh, I get a 3% pay raise. I'm going to add 1%. By the time you hit 20 years, you're putting 30% of your paycheck in, plus any promotions, you're probably at 40%, 30, 35%, going into your thing, plus the 5% matching, and you're living just fine. Or, I mean, even if you don't do it every single time you get a pay raise, you're still living well. But, I mean, 5% match is a 100% guaranteed ROI. You can't argue with that. So that's a great first step. And it no longer starts off in the G fund, which sucks. It's bonds. It now starts in the life cycle fund, correlated
Wow,
with when
that's
you
a
should
huge
retire.
change.
So like even if you don't understand anything, even if you don't understand anything about finances, you can just leave it alone, let it ride, and you'll be able to at least pull a decent amount of money out of it comfortably.
Wow, I'm shocked. Like,
That's huge.
for the, if you can see me on video, like that right there is going to save hundreds of thousands of people who just don't know any better, just out of the gate.
Yep.
Just
Absolutely.
that's incredible.
I was one. I contributed 10 or 15%, or between 8 and 10%, 8 and 12%, depending on where I was, into the TSP for that first. By the time I hit the 2015 and I started learning about this stuff, I had averaged probably a 9% or 10% that I'd been contributing.
Man.
It had always been in the G fund. So you think 2008 to 2015, the market's averaging a 20 to 30% return coming out of the crash, and I'm earning 2% because I was in bonds. So had anybody just come alongside me and been like, hey, do this, like just change it to one of these accounts, I would have at least double in there that what I do now. It's
That's
not
crazy. You're saying the federal government.
Well, and I
Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, go ahead, Hugh. Oh, I was just going to say something we really need to highlight there because you breezed over it really quick. You and Hugh talks about this all the time. You set it up so it was automatic and you learned to live without it from the beginning so you didn't notice. And then it just, you, if you could have taken advantage of all those different things that you talked about, where you'd be now, as opposed to safeguarding you from yourself. Hugh's like, I didn't trust myself when I was early on. I've heard him say it a million times. So I did this and I just put the money into this thing. You made it automatic for all these young guys and gals that are going in the military. Listen to what Dave just said. Make it automatic. Do it from the day you sign. And by the time you're thinking about separating or retiring, you are going to be in an awesome position financially. I love that step, Dave.
And the fact that if you're listening to this podcast, there's a very good chance that, well, hopefully that you're at least curious at being decent. And, you know, hopefully when someone finds it and say, oh, I went and checked, right? Because there's some of the, not old timers, but some of the folks that are in now, or some of the folks that, you know, right when they transitioned from, you know, when TSP was first a thing, they've never checked. And there's a good chance that they are still in the G fund right now. So that's huge that they're doing that where it's just automatically happening. That's a big deal. I had a similar story in corporate America. I was just some intern. I think I was 19. I went to work for ExxonMobil, and all of a sudden it popped up on my calendar and it said, hey, and it said like investment stuff. And I was an IT guy. And I was like, whatever. And one of the old guys on my team who's like 68, he was going to retire. He grabbed me and all the interns, went to a whiteboard, and he just taught us all the things that he wished he did when he was a kid. That was my like first. It was because someone else did something, not because I even did anything. And I'm super fortunate for that to have happened. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
nice. Well, okay. So
automate it, kids. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Protect you from yourself.
Well,
I wish someone would have told me that because I was always hustling, making money my whole life, and no one said, "Hey, you should put that somewhere where you can't get to it." I'd have been like, "Oh,
That is The Richest Man in Babylon is one of the simplest, dumbest, easiest books in all of finance. And literally all it says is, well, we'll paraphrase. Hey, dumbass, put 10% of everything you earn somewhere you don't touch it.
yeah, basically.
Let it grow.
I wish someone would have said it in those terms directly to me as like a 14-year-old, because I was like,
Dude,
"Ooh, I got money in my pocket."
I remember I had one. We'll go on to the next question, but before that, I remember one thing that my uncle taught me, and he's Asian, and he said I was like 13 at the time, and he was like, Hugh, and this is just a basic savings thing, right? Because I was super young, I didn't really know any better. He said, Hugh, Americans or white people, they don't save anything. If they get in $100, they spend all $100. Chinese, we save 40% to 50%. Japanese, they save 60%. If they get in $100, they save $60. I said, at least do that. That was like one of the only few, and I did not follow that. But if you're coming out of college, you're 20 something. Okay, if you get $100, like you get $2,000 a month, you're in the Marines, you're whatever in the military. When you get the money, you're used to living with less because you were just a student or you were just a boot or whatever it was. Just keep on keeping on. And every time as you get a promotion, just increase it proportionally by percentage. You're not living without. You've already been living without.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
I have a feeling
Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
What your Asian uncle actually said was, Hugh, avoid the white devil. I mean, save half of your income.
I'm just thinking, do you guys follow that Instagram account, Entrepreneur, that I'm always tagging? It's like ENTRA.
Oh, it's like a meme account, right?
NURE. And he's always posting ridiculous videos, and it's hilarious. I love it. I've talked to the guy since he had like 5,000 followers. He and I have gone back and forth a little bit here and there, but he's always joking. He's like, one of the ways that you can be rich is have rich uncles. And just like, he always posts like, you know, trade in the rare fish market and like just stupid things. But Hugh says that, all I'm thinking is like, oh, discredited. Hugh just had rich uncles.
No, he's not a rich uncle.
But you're right, though.
Richie
I mean, our culture, American culture, does not
Money at
teach
all.
anything other than consumerism.
Yeah.
Yep, spend it.
All right. So we just kind of went into it. You had what you were talking about as, hey, if you were about to get in and you're just newly in the military, right? What you wish you knew. So this is a similar question, but it's different. What if you're already in? You are that you at 7 years, or you are now a veteran. You're out, but you are now aware of these things. What would you change? What would you wish you knew? Or if someone's getting started, what are some action steps they can take to, help with that?
Yeah, if I was to go back in time, I would buy my course.
Okay.
Okay, I can't even say
Solid.
that with a straight face.
I'd go give Dave
um,
I was like, your
I'm trying to
face
go
is so
full guru
swollen.
here.
Good for you,
Like
Dave.
trying. Buy my shit. I'll teach you and not help you and handhold you all the way to nowhere. God, anyway, sorry. For those who don't know, I talk smack about gurus online a lot. So, I would say the single fastest way to change the trajectory of your financial future is to house hack, and you do it with the VA loan, which Dane has done, Hugh's done, maybe not the VA loan part, but the house hack part with roommates and tenants and whatever. I've done it 3 times now, and the Americans, by and large, our biggest expense is your place of living. Your house, whether you're renting or you own, your cost of living is the largest expense. Usually it's a third of what people pay every month. And if you can, even if you don't eliminate it, if you cut it in half, that's huge. But most of the time you're able to eliminate it. Or even if you're paying a little bit out of pocket, the money you're paying out of pocket is going straight into the equity of your home by paying down the principal on the mortgage. So if you buy a fourplex with a VA loan, 0 down, and you have 3 tenants, and they pay 90% of your mortgage, and you're getting a housing allowance, and you pay the rest, and it goes into principal, like you just went from, let's say you're in San Diego, $2,000-$3,000 a month that you were getting from the government and you're putting out into a house, to $2,000-$3,000 a month that you're getting from the government and you're putting, let's call it half, $1,500 in your pocket. And now $1,500, that's what, $18,000 a year? You do that for 3 years, that's almost 60 grand. That's a down payment on a house almost anywhere.
Huge.
And even if it's not, that's 60 grand that you, if you're smart, you put it in like a Vanguard VTSAX index fund or a high yield savings account or something where you're at least earning a return on it. And then that 60 realistically in 3 years is probably closer to 80 or 100. I mean, it is the single fastest way to change. And here's the real benefit, right? The intangibles. You learn how to be a landlord, depreciation, you get all the benefits, cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, principal pay down. You learn how to be a landlord, but it's not scary. Like if I tell you as Nick, the new guy investor, I want you to buy a house, and you're like, I'm going to get into investing, and you go tell your family, they're all going to tell you about tenants and toilets and things that can go wrong and scare you out of it. But if you're like, hey mom, I'm going to buy a house, that's the American dream. No one's going to talk you out of buying a house for yourself. And so it's much less scary to buy a fourplex that you're going to live in because it's a place for you to live rather than an investment. And for some reason, that little mindset shift makes it so much easier for someone to take the jump. And once you own a house and people are paying you to live there, and then you're like, wow,
You have to live somewhere anyways,
game over.
no matter where you're at.
Yeah, once it clicks, you are golden.
Yeah. But Dave, that's such solid advice. It didn't click until you really started getting into it. And I love that you said that's where you'd start, because I was late to the game. We were getting out of the military. We didn't take advantage of TSP. We didn't do all the smart moves. And the next thing I knew, we were moving back to the States.
What branch of the military were you in?
Well, Kim was Navy. We were getting out of there.
Dude, what branch of the military were you in?
Oh, Air Force?
Okay, I just wanted it to go on record that the Air Force guy.
Dude, you're such a dick. Anyway.
They're the smart ones, everybody.
The branch I was in. And then I was like, I know what he's doing. But to Dave's point,
I have to talk shit. It's in my nature.
to Dave's point, I was living the dream on paper, or on the gram, you could say. Trips everywhere. If I needed something, I would just buy it, that sort of thing. But when we transitioned to the States, I didn't have any investment vehicles in place. We didn't even own property because we moved around so much. Kim didn't feel comfortable doing any sort of landlordship or anything,
Well,
even though it was always something I was interested in. So we did exactly what you said. I bought my first duplex with the VA at the age of, 39. So you got to think, I started from 39 years old, did the house hack, did exactly what you said, and from there have been able to buy multiple properties and start building towards that dream, right? I'm a little bit late to the game, but it put me right on track from having missed the last 10 to 20 years of people doing the smart thing the right way. So I love that you brought that up because it 100% is something you should take advantage of if you haven't, and it's never too
I want
late.
to
It
jump
was
in
awesome.
and
My
say
my duplex
something
is the thing that
that kind of like
yeah.
it goes on top of what Dane was just talking about. So it was that, you know, right up front, you were getting out, right? You're getting out of the military, and you said you had the Graham life. You were like, we have all these expensive trips. We were doing all this stuff. And guess what? If you're taking what Dave's advice is, you already, the entire time you had to pay to live somewhere anyways. You could have house hacked, lived wherever you wanted, and then blown all your income doing all the fun things that you're talking about anyways, because everyone has to live somewhere. You just happen to be paying yourself every month instead of paying someone else. And you can still, so that's a way to accelerate your growth without giving up, quote, sacrificing or whatever. And I just want to jump in and say that one thing
Yeah.
because Dave's advice was super powerful.
Right.
And you could have had
It's
both.
so powerful, and you don't have to just buy a fourplex or duplex. When I was in college, I was renting a room from a guy, and we were in our young or mid 20s. He couldn't have been older than 24, and he owned the house and rented rooms to all of us, and we were paying his mortgage. And I was like, this dude's a freaking genius. So I'd seen it years and years before, but it wasn't that he had to like have a duplex or a fourplex. You can do it with any property that you own. And that guy, man, he was so smart. He set himself up so well. But he probably had a rich uncle.
Of course.
Of course he did. But anyway, really awesome. I do have another question. This is one of my favorite ones to ask. So now that you're Dave, you're smart Dave, and you have built some wealth, you've been in this game for a little bit. What is your favorite wealth building vehicle right now? The suspense
The
is coming.
answer that pops into my head is actually one that's kind of just comical sounding to say out loud, but time.
Okay.
Like
Can you
Okay.
explain why?
ultimately, yeah, ultimately, like, I joke about real estate. It bails you out of mistakes because it's forgiving and it'll, there's not much the market won't fix over the long term. But that's the reality. Like, time is, if you set yourself up right in vessels that compound, you're going to benefit the longer you're at the game. I mean, the longer you play, the more you win. And so I think the single best thing anybody could do is start today if you haven't already. A dollar, here's the best example for it. A dollar invested in the thrift savings plan, let's say, or the index fund or whatever that earns, we'll call it just 7%. A dollar that earns 7% invested at 20 is worth $2 invested at 30, $4 invested at 40, $8 invested at 50, and $16 invested at 60. And so if I put $100 into my TSP at 20 years old, that's 1600, or it's the equivalent of me putting $1600 a month away when I'm 60. And if you do that at 15, 18, whenever you start getting money, you put just a little bit aside and you let time work its magic. It's crazy what happens. And that's a 7% return. You're going to average higher than that on real estate. And you're going to average higher than that in a lot of vehicles. The other answer to that would be business, right? Like my online persona, my brand, some of the deals I get
Your
there,
courses.
all my courses I sell so hard. All that stuff, that is money that I basically take and then I either pay off debt or stash it into real estate. And so it's like a lot of people I know who are well off, they have some kind of a business or revenue generating machine, and then that builds money and they store it in things like real estate, index funds, whatever, and just let time work its magic. And so I think, I love real estate still because there's so many things you can do with it, but I don't think that I'm not the guy who's stuck on one asset class over everything. I have a little bit of crypto. I have index funds. I have TSP. I have real estate. Granted, real estate is the largest holding, but but I have stuff everywhere, and I just think the longer you play the game, the more you
Yeah,
win.
time in the market is more important
And
than timing
Dave,
the market.
yeah,
That was said
right.
by
And I want to
that
add,
one really dumb guy,
Right.
Warren, right?
yeah, oh, that guy, he's old. Um, I want to
Yeah,
say,
he wasn't.
I want
What
to say
he
we
became the
often
richest man in the world at
focus on,
68, something like that.
I feel
something
like
like that.
someone's internet's off.
Amazing.
We're cutting over.
Oh,
I don't know if it's
that was
mine.
probably me.
Okay.
I just wanted to say we often think about this as time in which we're living ourselves, but think about your kids. The quicker you can open an IRA for them at 12, 13, 14, we just did this for my son, and he earns money. Instead of us paying a landscaping company to do our properties, I'm paying him the same amount, and we are funneling that into his own investment account. So by the time he's 18, he'll have funded it about $1,000 a year for 4 years before anyone even knew at his age will know what an IRA is. So when you talk about time, take advantage of it, not just for you, but for your kids. There are so many vehicles that can hook them up. You can start funding their school and education before college now. There's vehicles to do that. And I'm just learning about all these, but take advantage of time,
I
not just for
put
you, but
uh,
your family members.
Actually, yeah,
I love that.
I
Dave, can
put
you get
300.
into?
I put $300 a month into a UTMA for Jack, and I was putting $100 a month into each him and Cody's UTMA, and then I moved it from 100 in each to 200 in Jack's during the divorce, and then because I had to give up custodial rights of Cody's, but Cody's I just handed it over at $12,000. He's 15, but Jack's I'm putting 300 in now because I was going to up it every year for that.
Dave, for
Anyway,
listeners who don't know, what is a UTMA? Can you explain that?
I actually don't remember exactly. Uniform something minor account. Basically, it is an account. It's not an IRA, so you can touch it before retirement. It's not a 529, so it doesn't have to go to college. It's just basically an index fund. But it is an index fund that I have designated that no matter what will transfer to Jack when he turns 18. And so, I'm not saying he gets to pull it out, but I'm saying at that point, he could. Like, it's his money. But ultimately, my goal with that is to have enough for a down payment for a house when he turns 18.
And I've got a.
Or house hack.
Oh, hopefully that'd be great.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So he's got. I upped it to $300 because that is the amount that at 7% will equal 50 grand by the time he turns 18 that I'll be able to handle.
Well, it was supposed to happen yesterday, but a friend of mine works for a trucking company. He just had a kid. Kid's like, I don't know, 5 months old, 6 months old, and he's supposed to come over, and we're going to set up a UTMA for his kid, who's like not even a year old, and he's going to contribute, whatever, $50 a month into the account or whatever it is. But by the time the kid's 18, I think on like super conservative numbers, it should be something like $18,000 or $20,000, just like from him doing nothing. And I think it was like if he put $3,000 in and never put anything again ever again, by the time he's 65, it's like $1 million or something like that. So time, that's a great wealth
Man.
building vehicle, Dave.
Yeah, and a lot of these tools will help build your kids' wealth for themselves. So like I said, we take money that Ben earns for himself. So he's building his retirement, and we're just contributing by giving him the work. So it's like you can set your kids up without spoiling them or without just giving them everything. So that's what I love the answer. Take advantage of time and some of these tools that are just there for that kind of thing.
We're probably going to jump in and do a whole episode around it, but a lot of people give their kids allowances anyways, but a lot of people don't realize instead of giving your kid an allowance, which is not tax deductible, you can, oh wait, Dave's going to say it. Oh,
no.
you just,
Go for
you're
it.
going to, you can pay your kid instead. Then they can throw that into a Roth IRA, and you as the adult, the parent, can write it off against your income. We'll do a whole thing about that. But then that is real income that shows their credit history for a long period of time. And all kinds of crazy stuff. And yes.
Yeah, numbers may have changed, but to my knowledge, it's like 12 grand a year that you can pay them as a tax write-off for your kid. And they could be at 1 year old. They could be a model or mow your yard.
Actually, I think it's like 14,000.
And then Oh, see, so it upped, but then half of that can go into the IRA or whatever, like 60. Actually, I think the allowance for that is seven grand this year. So, yeah,
So that's cool.
Pretty cool.
Well, we are moving on to our next section called Uncomfortable Money Questions. Dave, if you got into an accident right now,
I'm so nervous.
how long could your business or family survive? And are you doing anything about it if they can't?
It's a good question. Not nearly as long as I would like it to be. I actually have a consult set up in 11 days with my asset protection attorney to set up a irrevocable trust now that the divorce is finalized, so that I can make the trust the beneficiary of my life insurance. And then I can set instructions in there for my kid and everything else to get it, because I don't want to hand my, if I died tomorrow, I don't want my kid to get a $500,000 check at 7 years old. Because, well, either he would spend it or somebody who's not him and has custodial rights would spend it. And I would like to put it in a trust where I can behave with it. The business, I actually have a fairly significant amount of recurring income. So, I mean, if I passed today and we shut everything down, and this is something I should probably figure out in the community, like, I don't think you'd want the community to shut down completely. So I'd almost wonder, like, if I could set it up in a way that I hand the keys to somebody I trust in the community, and I get 10% recurring, 20% recurring to go to the trust. Because right now, like, the business generates on average $17,000 to $23,000 a month recurring. No sale. That would be without a single sale, without, but I have staff. I pay 12 grand a month in payroll, or 14.5 in payroll. And so, if I fired everybody and just let it coast, it'd probably go for a little while at least, but it's not where it should be. Now I am in the process of discussing hiring a COO. We've been going back and forth. We're going to see where that goes, and that'll really streamline a lot of stuff. But then in the process of setting up that trust, I do have some considerations to make for sure.
Yeah, Dave, you don't even have to ask. It's a yes. Sure, man. I got you. But anyway.
You won't even join the community. How can I give you the keys?
Dude, that makes me a better contender, because then I have a reason to run it well. I'm not just dipping my hand in the cookie jar. But anyway, neither here nor
This is
there.
like my favorite thing is that Hugh wants to be in the community so fucking bad, and he's not eligible because he didn't serve personally. And Dane is eligible, and he's a right-hand man and our business partner, and is like, I don't care. I'm like,
No, I care.
I love it.
I care, but I want to join when I'm ready to put time in it, and like add value
Yeah, I
add a
know.
bit. I'm like that guy who's
Yeah.
like so flighty. I'm like,
Yeah,
they wouldn't even know I was a
why
part of
start
the group.
investing today when I can start investing
right.
next year?
Yeah, right. And you're gonna hand me the keys to the kingdom anyway. But that's a different conversation. Here's one of my favorites, Dave. If you have one, what is your biggest and most irrational money fear, and why?
I don't know if it's a fear. I haven't quite figured out the root of this yet, but I spend. Like, I'm like Hugh. I can't trust myself with cash. If it's sitting around, it's going somewhere. So I almost immediately put it into debt or in investment. And so I don't necessarily know what that is, or that there's a fear there, but I think there's some level of scarcity that comes with, like, I almost always force myself to live paycheck to paycheck, and then I'm always, like, stressing about money. Now, I think part of that's because I believe that when I'm hungry, I'll work harder. But I don't know, it's somewhere in there. I don't know. Maybe someone listening to this is a psychologist and can unpack that for me.
Yeah.
So
Or
it's
maybe
that
not.
you have a scarcity
No,
mindset. Is that right? It's just that you're not spending money, or you blow anything you have.
It's a whole combination of things. But essentially, if you gave me 10 grand a day, actually, that happened like 2 days ago. It would almost immediately be out of the ops account, and it would be either into paying down a debt, or investing in the business, or investing somewhere else. Like January, I had a check come in, and I was like, IRA funded. I'm like, okay, cool, that's not
Right.
a bad deal. Also, subconsciously, part of it is because I'm like, if it sits here, I'm going to spend it, and so like I struggle with
So
spending.
you're hiding it from yourself. You're getting it out of where you can see it while you're.
Yeah. But then I'm almost constantly like, people will be like, oh, I forgot to run your credit card. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
I forgot to.
Like, I put all the money out of the account already.
Well, that's cool though. But you're like instantly taking the money and you're paying something off, right? Or paying a debt down.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you're not worried and this could be financial too, just in general around wealth. I've talked to several people, and one guy was like, man, I'm really worried that as I start to make it in life and the benefits that come with that, like better looking younger women hitting on me or whatever, I'm not going to be strong enough to blank. And I was like, huh.
Oh, I
So
am absolutely
it's always
strong enough to throw them around the room.
no worries there for Dave. But I mean, that's really the whole idea is we all have these strange, irrational fears around money or finances. Um, uh, when I was younger, one of mine was I didn't want people to think money to elevate me above other people and them to think I was a rich jerk, you know? And so it just, we all have something psychological going on we got to figure out. But okay, it's a little scarcity.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Nice. All right. What is an actionable step the listeners can take immediately to get closer to financial independence?
Give me money
That's
and buy
right.
my course.
Join the
can't.
war room. If you're military, honestly, join the war room.
I mean, I want to say house hack, but that's not something you could like jump on immediately. I would say the first thing you could do, and I'm terrible at this, so don't ask me how I do it because I don't. Track your fucking spending. Know where your money goes for the last 3 months. If you're not doing it, start doing it now. Spend the next 3 months, do an audit, figure out where the hell you're spending money and where you can cut, because you're going to be surprised at how much money you spend eating out. On you're looking right now. You're looking at your life and you're like, I don't have any money to invest, and it's because you spent it all on whatever, and you're looking for what can I put in at the end of the month. When really what you should be doing is saying, here's what I spent last month. I can afford to eat out. If I eat out 3 less times, I'll save $200 or whatever. Let me put $200 on April 1st into an account that I don't fucking touch and I invest, and then I'll just eat 3 less times out. You eat still, but like eat or don't if you're fat like me, and just don't eat for a day. Ta-da!
Live off your reserves.
You just fast for 24 hours. It's called healthy. But pay yourself first a little bit and just get in that habit. But see where your money goes. You would be amazed. And I know I'm doing it. I know that I'm spending money eating out that I don't need to spend eating out because I enjoy. That's one of the things I enjoy: food and experiences and travel. And but yeah,
That's huge.
Well, Hugh, does that sound like a reoccurring theme? Obviously, we did an entire episode about just tracking your
Right.
spending. It was such a powerful way to just start being aware. Dave has said it. Mindy Jensen said it before Dave. And Hugh was really, really on it when we first started these episodes, because it is the one thing that can give you the most clarity on what the heck you're doing and how to do
Well,
it
and Dave
better.
said two things. The
Right?
first
So
thing
I
he
love
said
that.
was track your spending. And then the second thing he said was,
Yeah.
and he still does this today, even though he thinks he has an issue with it, which is hide your money from you, right? And a lot of people, and this was my biggest mistake probably biggest mistake, is I'd say, oh, it auto drafts to this other bank account or this other savings account. No. That never worked. When it auto drafts to go into a Fidelity or Vanguard and then I don't see it, that's when I actually saved anything. Because every time it's going to the savings, I would just rob it all the time. I'd be like, oh, well, I need a fridge or I need, this new TV or whatever the stupid thing was. So Dave listed two things. That's great.
Or cash on hand. Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. I don't hide my money enough, and I see it in its most vulnerable time, like when it's changing, for example. And, you got to get better at putting your money somewhere where you can't see it. And I know it really does make all the difference. The times that I had the most was when I made it hard to get to. So it's a great point. Hello.
Dan, that's you. Dan, you got this one.
huh?
Okay, so
Oh,
we
I
got
was
a
like,
few
I was
things.
like, am I supposed to be doing something? Did I miss something here?
No, that was actually really funny, because we were contemplating asking some things that you actually covered on your younger self. Where would you go to find resources? What you did wrong? Tools that you would have used better, like the VA, like house hacking. We got into tracking your spending. I guess one thing that I really want to ask you is, besides the Purple Book, everyone gets that Kiyosaki's book is really, really influential and transformative. Okay. What is one book or resource you wish 18-year-old you would have read or had access to?
It can't be your book.
No, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. That's not my style. See, the problem is that that answer changes so much based on context and what you're looking for me. Like it used to be like, oh yeah, this book, but now it's like, well, where are you struggling? But one of the other really influential books when I first started was 4 Hour Work Week, and I think that would be one that
Oh,
I
wow.
wish I'd been handed, because it, W-2 jobs and salary jobs and the military and all these other jobs, they teach you the idea, essentially, whether subconsciously or not, of how little work do I need to do to avoid getting fired and still have a job. Not how can I be as efficient as humanly possible in the time that I'm given. And if you take over a business or investing or whatever, efficiency is your jam. And so I wish that I'd read that, because that book essentially teaches you like how to be more efficient, how to outsource things at a costly, a not so costly level. And yeah, that's probably my
Nice.
answer.
Where can listeners find out more about you?
Thebestpodcastguest.com.
Nice.
You can download my book
Solid.
for free, and you can follow me on all my socials.
And I'll plug another resource, and it is actually
And what
Dave's
about your?
book, or Dave's book. So if you're going to join the military, I
Well, yeah,
recommend
you go to that link, you'll get it for free.
Yeah, awesome. And they can also look you up if they are a veteran. No joke, on the War Room, right? What information? How do they find out more about that? Because that's a super cool community. So I've heard.
I kind of gatekeep it. I would say if you download that book, and if you're serious about achieving financial freedom, you want to like get in a group of vets that are serious about it, just shoot me a message, and you can find me on Instagram's probably the best one. And it's
right.
on
You don't
my
want
page.
just anyone. You want people who care.
Yeah, yeah, we do a pretty
Yeah,
good job of vetting
awesome.
the riffraff.
Well, Dave, you're one of our favorite podcast guests and business partners and friends. Obviously, we see you a lot. But truly, thank you for being on, talking about some of your early life, talking about some of the tools or advice you would have used or given yourself. These are things that are invaluable. I certainly wish I would have been able to hear a podcast like this, some real talk, at much younger, when I was 18, when I was considering joining the armed forces in the first place. Such a cool gateway and path, if you use it correctly, to get incredible benefits. And I've utilized a lot of those benefits later in life, because my wife is also was active duty Navy. And so these are just things people don't know about. And certainly if they did, especially the no paying for college kind of stuff, you start life out ahead if you know what you're doing and what you're getting into. And that's really what Dave's trying to push in his book, and what we hope listeners are starting to kind of get a grasp of on this. And not to mention just for you, but your kids. Your kids follow you all around the world, deployment to deployment, and there's so many things that they can take advantage of just because you chose to serve. So, Dave, solid. Any last advice you'd like listeners to know or do?
Just be careful who you take advice from. If they haven't done what you want and they haven't achieved the life that you want, then tune them out. Best example I can give of that, and I joke about this all the time, but if you want to be a UFC fighter, you find a coach, not your mom. Your mom has your best interest at heart, but she doesn't know anything about fighting UFC. Same should be with real estate. If you want to learn about real estate, go find a real estate investor. Don't listen to people who don't invest in real estate. They might have your best interest at heart. It doesn't mean they know they're qualified to speak on that topic.
That's fantastic.
Solid.
I love that.
Love it.
Well, Dave, thanks for being on, and we look forward to having you back in the future when we do some deep dives into very specific and epic topics, which we definitely know what they are right now while we're shooting this video. So,
Yeah.
Go Itashimashita.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Thanks, Dave.
Hugh speaks the wrong Asian, so he doesn't know.
all right.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Oh shit, we're still recording. Thanks for having me on.
All right.